Hello, everyone. Seriously, I hope you're all as excited to be here tonight as I am. Doing something like this has been a goal of mine for a while. So first of all, I'm going to start off with a little explanation about how the sun keeps our planet warm. The sun shines down upon the Earth, and that light comes, it takes a visit to the Earth, it warms us up, and then importantly, that sunshine bounces away from planet Earth. Or at least, that's how it's supposed to happen. Sometimes sunlight can get trapped here. And one thing that can cause that sunlight to be trapped is a chemical called nitrous oxide. And now, when I think of nitrous oxide, I'm actually reminded of a date I went on last year. So I met this person on a dating app, and we decided we'd go to the beach as our first date. We spent about 3 hours together. And okay, guys, for this, I'm going to need you to use your imaginations. Let's pretend for a moment that I am a ray of sunshine, that I brighten up every room I walk into. So, after this date, there's no real connection on my end. I felt like a ray of sunshine. I should meet once and then bounce away to fulfill my destiny. But actually, after these 3 hours together, this person turns to me and says, "You know what? I'm just going to say it. Luke, I love you. And you know, I know you don't want to have kids, but I'm going to work on you. I'm going to convince you to have kids with me." I was terrified. But you know what scares me more? Nitrous oxide. Genuinely. Because in the same way that we actually would have been miserable, and any theoretical kids would have been utterly miserable, when nitrous oxide gets onto our planet and gets released, it traps sunlight here more than it was ever meant to be. It keeps it here, and that keeps heating up the planet. That energy trapped on the Earth is what global warming is. It causes the planet to warm up, and it is scorching parts of the Earth. Humans have doubled the amount of reactive nitrogen, like nitrous oxide, present on planet Earth since the Industrial Revolution. And we release it in a variety of ways. One major source is fertilizers in farming. And our food supplies rely on these fertilizers. So we're not getting rid of this problem. You put down ammonia-based fertilizer, it seeps into the environment, and then that causes problems. But even us, every one of us, we release reactive nitrogen in our wastewater. Every time you go to the bathroom, you're peeing out reactive nitrogen. But thankfully, most nitrogen present on our planet is here as non-reactive atmospheric nitrogen. And we want to make sure that as much of the reactive nitrogen we produce as possible gets converted to this non-reactive nitrogen form. And now, my entire PhD could probably be summed up in this slide alone. I identify as a microbiologist. That's what my training is in. I know I'm talking about chemicals. They might scare you. They scare me. But I am looking at the conversion of ammonia, one type of reactive nitrogen, to nitrate in the environment. And the reason why bacteria are important is because microorganisms, tiny, tiny living things, living in our waters and soil that we never see because they're so small. Microbes like bacteria are the only things on the planet that convert these types of reactive nitrogen to other chemicals. And they are constantly creating this nitrogen cycle that all of us, every animal, every plant, every person relies on to keep our planet alive. And now, this is where I want to introduce the idea of actual love. So, because they're tiny, they're bacteria, they're hard to relate to, when two adult humans come together, one thing leads to another, and they will often have children together. Well, because bacteria are a little bit different, when bacteria find love, this bacterium, imagine it spots the ammonia from across the bar. It goes, rrrr. Maybe does a little mating dance as well on the way over, shows up with flowers because it's romantic. When they come together, they don't produce a child, but they produce this other chemical, nitrate. And this is a really important step in turning our reactive nitrogen that we release back to non-reactive atmospheric nitrogen. But sometimes, because those bacteria can be pesky little things, when you release ammonia to the environment, they create nitrous oxide instead. So even though these living things are tiny, tiny, impossible to see without advanced equipment, it is really important that we understand how they work in the environment and what makes them tick so that we can prevent them from producing harmful chemicals. So people actually have been working on this for decades, but as you might expect, it's very hard to understand what goes on with these things. So you can go out into the environment, and one thing people have tried is measuring DNA. Now, most of you have probably heard of DNA. Everything that you are, biologically speaking, is written in your DNA. So people have tried going out into the environment and measuring DNA because these organisms can't perform this reaction, this conversion from ammonia to nitrate, nitrification. They can't perform it if they don't have the gene for it in their DNA. But actually, doing this would be a lot like checking someone's Tinder matches to see if they've fallen in love with anyone. And now, my mother would be very proud to know that I have almost 400 matches on Tinder. But what she doesn't realize, or at least I don't think she realizes, is half the time you match with someone on Tinder, you don't even start talking to each other. And measuring the DNA is actually pretty much the same thing, because we know the DNA is there, but we don't know if it's being used. The same way, you can match with someone, you often won't talk to them. Just matching with someone only opens the possibility to finding love. So people have tried going one step closer to what's actually happening. The next thing they tried is measuring something called RNA. Now, RNA is literally just the message produced when DNA is expressed. So RNA is written when the DNA decides it actually wants to start working. And that would be exactly like checking someone's Tinder conversations to see if they're finding love. And now, here's a recent example of one of my Tinder conversations. I opened with, hello. Or sorry, I actually opened with, hey, this time. And I got back, hello. How's life? Miserable. And honestly, it is. Like, seriously, this is what you're dealing with most of the time. And when you measure RNA, when you measure these messages in the environment, most of the time you find some low level of RNA. A little bit is written, not a huge amount. But the last study to come out of my lab group found that a really small number of the bacteria in the environment with the DNA for performing this nitrification produced a huge amount of the RNA. So that's the equivalent of, out of hundreds of Tinder matches, having long conversations with 3 of them. And if any of you have used Tinder, you might have experienced this. You match with someone and instantly you click. Oh my God, you see the potential. You want them. You're thinking, oh, my parents will love them. But if you've used Tinder in this way, you know that you learn not to trust people. And the same way, once RNA is produced, it doesn't guarantee that the reaction is taking place as we expect it to. So that's where I come in, because I am going to measure the activity of these bacteria directly in the environment. I am going to put them under a microscope, one by one. And remember when I said they have flowers? I am going to measure a label that they pick up when they convert ammonia, in order to identify the ones that are active in the environment, because we really, seriously, genuinely need to understand which ones are active if we want to prevent any more damage from climate change ruining our planet. So, from hundreds of potential matches, we check our expectations. We have about 3 long conversations. And then finally, I will identify the bacteria that are active in the environment. And who knows, maybe while I'm here I'll find love as well. Thank you very much for coming.